Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is NopeNapNarp, and today I want to welcome you to a new series I've been planning for the channel, Psychology in Gaming. In this series, I look to analyze and explain video game content and the impact that it has on us as humans through the lens of psychology. Now, I have studied psychology extensively during my college years and am actually a certified psychology teacher, and I find this field of social science to be incredibly fascinating. And because of that, I want to share that knowledge with you through a medium that we all enjoy: video games. You see, psychology is the study of mental processes and individual human behavior. This branch of study focuses in on how we think, how we feel, how we operate, and how we behave as individuals who are a part of a much larger society. And let's be honest, video games can influence lots of these factors: our behavior, our emotions, and our perspectives. So I hope you enjoy exploring video games in a brand new way. So without further ado, let's jump straight in to today's video. So let me ask you this. Have you ever finished playing a game and felt a sense of dread? Perhaps it first started when you realized you were nearing a game's conclusion, or perhaps you felt it after the game just abruptly ended. Regardless of how it came on, here you are. You've just finished playing an incredible video game that sucked you in. One of those games that you lose track of time while you're playing and can't stop thinking about when you're not playing, and you feel that sense of wanting more. Sure, you could replay the game, but you know it won't be as magical as that first initial experience. For me and many others, that game happens to be Dark Souls. But it could well be any given game that you are hooked on at any point in your life. The game took you to a place mentally that you have never been before, and you experienced true escapism from the real world. You felt so good playing the game, and are now so sad to see that it's over. Perhaps when you lay down to go to sleep at night, you see images of that game and can't stop thinking about it. This is actually a light symptom of what is called game transfer phenomena, and it can be quite upsetting. And folks, that roller coaster of emotions you just experienced and your brain's craving for more is very comparable to how the brain reacts after a person consumes a psychoactive drug for the very first time. So let's take a look at this from the psychological perspective. Within the field of psychology, there are many subfields that study different components of the human mind. One such field is devoted to the study of human consciousness. This field entails the study of both human consciousness and unconsciousness, as well as the study of altered states of consciousness, such as sleeping, dreaming, being hypnotized, and most importantly for this video, the brain on psychoactive drugs. Now, a psychoactive drug can be defined as any chemical substance that influences brain and body functions, and can be something as simple as caffeine to something more extreme such as heroin or LSD. Every psychoactive drug impacts the brain in a different way, but normally it causes one of three things to happen: a stimulation of brain activity, a depression of brain activity, or causing the brain to experience hallucinations. These effects are felt more under the influence of more extreme psychoactive drugs such as cocaine. And these effects have a lasting impact on the mind. Often the first time a person experiences a high from, say, cocaine for example, they report feeling a sense of euphoria or an overwhelming feeling of happiness. That first high is so good because the brain is releasing large amounts of chemicals at one time. The primary chemical in all of that being dopamine, a neurotransmitter in the brain that is often linked to feelings of happiness. But once the drug effects wears off, the person has an emotional crash as they come down quickly from that euphoria and their brains are left wanting more. You see, they simply want to get back to that sensation they felt while on the drug for the first time. Sound familiar? It's eerily similar to what I described earlier about my first Soulsborne experience, and probably yours too. So now that we understand some of the psychological background, let's take a look at this through the lens of the actual video games themselves. So what am I saying? That doing cocaine is the same as playing Dark Souls for the first time? Well, let's be quite clear, it's not that simple, and while the effects are comparable, they aren't identical. Obviously, ingesting cocaine or other hard drugs will have a very negative impact on your life, and I don't want to glorify the use of drugs. Instead, what we are focused on here is comparing the journey the brain takes while on a drug versus playing a once-in-a-generation video game. So let's continue. If you break down the components to their most basic level, the use of cocaine and playing an amazing video game both share similar stimulation for the brain to consume and experience. You first ingest something, whether it's the drug or by playing the game, then the brain finds pleasure in it and releases large amounts of dopamine. This pleasure is caused either by the chemicals in the drug or from the reward systems that have been designed into the game. Next, the effect of the drug wears off, or you just beat the game, and finally you're left wanting more, to chase that high you felt again. You may even experience symptoms of withdrawal. While these effects are greatly magnified while on the use of a drug versus playing a video game, there is no denying that the brain experiences a similar pattern when playing through a video game that the person finds to be truly enthralling. And if you want a little more information, I have left some links in the description to resources that document this pattern, so be sure to check that out for more information. Let's talk more about the withdrawal symptoms, or that sense of dread I mentioned earlier in the video, that a person may experience after coming down from their first high or completing an incredible game for the first time. Personally, I've only felt that withdrawal from 3 games in my life: Sly Cooper 2 Band of Thieves, Dark Souls, and The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which just happens to be my 3 favorite games of all time. Each game was like a new drug. Instead of meth, cocaine, or LSD, it was a platformer, an action RPG, and a fantasy-themed game. Upon finishing each of these games, I felt a sense of dread and wanting more. For example, upon finishing Dark Souls for the first time, I did extensive research to learn more about the lore and really enjoyed watching other players complete speedruns and blind playthroughs for the first time. I was obsessed with trying to recapture the magic I felt by playing the game for the first time, but even its sequels and spiritual successor Bloodborne couldn't bring me back to that first initial level. And I'm sure many of you might agree with that. Now, it might not have been Dark Souls, but it could have been any other game. Perhaps it was just Bloodborne that did it for you. Either way, these feelings are correlated with the rush of dopamine my brain secreted while playing through the game for the first time, whether it was due to finding a new area or beating a challenging boss. After that, the experience just couldn't be replicated because it wouldn't be new anymore. After that, the experience just couldn't be replicated because my brain had already started to build a tolerance towards Dark Souls. In other words, I knew the areas, I knew where to go, I knew what the bosses would do, and because of that, because I had already had that knowledge, the second playthrough could never be nearly as magical as the first. And that just happens to be the same situation that a lot of meth addicts find themselves in, except much, much worse. It's the inability to return to that first initial high, but also the inability to stop chasing that feeling. Take Jason here, for example.
Now, meet Jason Amaral. He is the face of the epidemic.
Real quick. Is this good enough, dude?
Your eyes open, you think about heroin. Nothing else, nothing else. And any addict that's watching this will attest to that. And if you don't have money, you're thinking about how to get money to get heroin immediately.
I blurred the visual, but you get the point from what Jason is saying. His whole life has been consumed by drug addiction, and while video game withdrawal will go away after a while, his addiction won't. The drug users chase and chase, but never get back to that initial high, as their body becomes more tolerant and more addicted to the drug. Just like that second playthrough of Dark Souls, when you now know where to go, who to fight, and what to expect, subsequent usage of psychoactive drugs, especially meth, will never be able to recapture the euphoria you felt from the first time using it. So in conclusion, I want to be perfectly clear. The high of playing a great video game for the first time will never, ever be as extreme or detrimental to a person's health as engaging with psychoactive drugs can be. My takeaway from looking more into this phenomena is this: that the high of playing an incredible video game and feeling sensations of withdrawal upon its ending are comparable to a person coming down from their first experience with drugs. The brain goes through a very similar process in both situations, and many of the same parts of the brain become activated during both of these events. The difference is that the drugs have a much more powerful and potentially longer lasting effect on the brain, as the chemicals from the drug impact the brain more profoundly than those feelings associated with playing a masterpiece of a video game. Dopamine, as you remember, is the chemical in our brain that is mostly associated with feelings of happiness, and it is interesting that the feelings of drug usage and video game playing are so tied to it. While the pattern the brain takes is similar, it is of course important to note that the consequences of drug usage are a lot worse than that of video game usage. Regardless though, it is my hope that next time you experience a game that captivates you for the very first time, that you will better understand the roller coaster of emotions that your brain is taking you on. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Because of the extreme impact drugs can have on a person's life, I am choosing to leave a link in the description to the drug abuse hotline number, a place where you or someone you love can find help with drug addiction. Check it out if you so choose. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you like the series. Should I do more or should I quit here? And as always, have a nice day and take care. Don't let him heal. Yeah!